What's going on, guys? Jacob here. What a card that was. UFC 273 was amazing. It was pretty good. So I'm just gonna give you some thoughts, reviews, and some DraftKings. Just just the hindsight of what happened. How the optimal lineup, my best lineup, which was not great, in being honest. Yeah. So here we go. So we first have Chimaev versus Burns was definitely fight of the night. And I thought that even had maybe some fight of the year potential. That was an amazing fight. Um, Chimaev showed he could strike with a top tier fighter like Gilbert Burns with a ton of power. Chimaev opened up with a takedown attempt, which Gilbert Burns stuffed, which is one of the first times we've seen Chimaev's opening takedown attempt get stuffed. So that was good to see. Gilbert landed the knockdown, and Chimaev also landed the knockdown, but Chimaev got 2 takedowns during the fight. So Chimaev won by unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. And I think that's accurate. Chimaev got tested, and he proved himself. He proved his worth. So excited to see who he fights next. Alexander Volkanovsky looked dominant against the Korean Zombie. Volkanovsky landed 152 strikes, with 138 of them being significant strikes. I think Herb Dean could have stopped it, maybe earlier third round. Not in the fourth round, but it's just sad. Because I really like the Korean Zombie. I really like the Korean Zombie. I also really like Alexander Volkanovsky, so I really didn't I didn't have a favorite in that fight. I figured Volkanovsky would win how he would. But I really wanted to see a very close competitive fight, but I didn't think it was going to happen. I was right. Volkanovsky won, dominating fashion. Volkanovsky only got 1 knockdown recorded, although he had the Korean Zombie hurt for almost the entirety of the fight. And Volkanovsky just looks dominant. I don't think there's a fighter in that weight class right now that can beat Alexander Volkanovsky, which is huge. And Volkanovsky won the fight by TKO in round number 4, about 40-some seconds in or something. Aljamain Sterling, by the way. Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan 2 was very good. Aljamain shocked the world, proved everyone wrong, and united the bantamweight championships. In rounds 2 and 3, Aljo shot on Petr, and Petr could not stuff the takedown attempt, and a little scramble ensued, just a little bit, and Aljo got the back of Petr Yan and held him down for 4.5 minutes each round 2 and 3. Those two won him the fight for sure. Sterling was able to get Petr Yan's back and control that position. And that's what I just said. Petr Yan won rounds 4 and 5, in a dominating fashion. But it all came down to round 1, which I had scored to Aljo, but some of the guys I was watching with had it scored Petr. So it was a very, very close fight, and Aljamain Sterling called out TJ Dillashaw after the fight. And I think the fight to make is TJ Dillashaw versus Aljamain Sterling. Then if Aljamain Sterling wins that fight, and then Petr Yan wins a fight against somebody. I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe there is a trilogy fight to be made there. So that would be fun to watch. I was impressed with Ian Gary. Alright? I thought he improved his striking defense. And I thought he showed off one of what he says is biggest strength, cardio. He looked very good against Weeks. Gary also defended takedowns very well, which is a big part in the UFC. Weeks didn't look bad though. Weeks still has UFC potential. Yeah. Gary, he won pretty dominating. No, not pretty dominating. He won round 3 pretty dominating, but he didn't win the first 2 dominating. It was a good fight, but Ian Gary didn't score well on DraftKings, which didn't make him worth his $9,200 price tag. And then I have Anthony Hernandez versus Josh Fremd was a very important fight for DFS. It was a grapple fest with Hernandez landing 8 takedowns and Fremd had 2 takedowns and looked promising in his UFC debut. I believe that Josh Fremd will be a pretty good fighter. I did like how he was grappling. He looked good on the ground, which is surprising because I had him written down as not the greatest grappler. So I had him more as a striker. So to see him be able to land some takedowns and grapple with Anthony Fluffy Hernandez was a very promising feat. It made me happy. So I'm glad I picked Josh Fremd in some, but he didn't win, so it wasn't good. Olenek, which I believed was one of the most important fighters that you needed on this week's card, won. Made quick work of Vandera via neck crank in round number 1. Olenek stunted grappling. Olenek stunted grappling. He was pretty impressive. He started grappling, right? He always does. Olenek is a big grappler. Came out right away. About 2 minutes in, boom, got him on the ground. Little scramble, and Olenek ended up on his back. Olenek ended up on Bandera's back and got the chokehold, and that was about it. So that was that. Now, Mike Malott landed a beautiful knockout against Mickey Gall with a left hook in a little bit of a exchange. Malott was winning the fight up until the finish as well, so Malott was an important fighter as well. Now, the optimal lineup on DraftKings was Volkanovsky, he's $9,500 salary, owned 54.8% of the time. He scored 133 fantasy points. Sterling with 6,900, so he's a big underdog. He was owned 26% of the time with fantasy points of 85.9. Madsen, 7,800 salary on DraftKings, owned 40.4% of the time. And really odd, you don't see fantasy points this low in the optimal, but fantasy points is 73.5, which I thought was mad. Mike Malott with 8,800 owned 16.7% of the time, an $8,800 salary, and he scored 111.5 fantasy points, so very important. Fluffy Hernandez was salary at 8,700, owned 22.5% of the time, and scored 117 fantasy points, so there were some pretty good fantasy points there. And Alexei Olenek, guy I thought was very important for your lineups, and I had in a lot of lineups, was 8,100, so a nice value play with that was owned 21.9% of the time and scored just under 100 fantasy points, so 40.48 away. My best lineup had Volkanovsky, Sterling, Weeks, Malott, Chimaev, and Santos. I was way too overexposed on Santos. I was overexposed for the right reasons for Chimaev. He didn't end up making the optimal, but he was in lineups around the top 5, top 10. So I'm fine with that. Glad I got Sterling right. I thought Petr Yan could win. I also thought Sterling could win. So for 6,900, you can't really deny Sterling's power and plausibility as a fighter. Less than $7,000. So that wraps up the card. I'm excited for next week's card, and we will hopefully make a little bit more money this time. Also, on Super Draft, I had Olenek captain. which scored like 230 something. So on Super Draft, I'm better than DraftKings, but for conventional wise, I do DraftKings for the YouTubers, because the YouTube fans, because not as many people have Super Draft. So yeah, that is it, and I'll see you guys probably Wednesday, maybe Thursdays when I will record my video. See you on the next YouTube video. Peace.